just talked to him like before he went on stage, and I was like, what the fuck? How drunk am I? And I couldn't tell that he was British. That was fantastic. Are you guys ready for your headliners tonight? Alright. This next woman comes to the stage and performs all over. She's headlined all over. She's very funny and talented. Give it up for Jessica Kinney, everybody.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about sex ed because it's very different than it used to be. And one of the things I learned was I talked to my great uncle recently, and he was telling me what his dad told him about sex. And it was just one statement, which is the guy never butts in unless the girl lays down the gap. So that's sex ed back then, right? I mean, this was also a very poor town, very little education. But I feel like it's like reverse chivalry, right? You know how back in the day the guy would lay down his coat so the girl, could step all over and not have to get her feet wet. It's like the opposite of that. Like now the girl has to lay down her gap over the puddle so that the guy can walk all over her without getting wet. And then my Gammy was telling me that she used to be a stenographer for a lawyer, and this woman comes in who's found out her husband's been cheating, and so she's writing down the story, and afterwards he's like, "Did you get all that?" And she said, "Yeah, but there was a word that I didn't understand in there." And he's like, "What is it?" She's like, "Prophylactic." And he's like, "Well, look it up." And she's like, "I don't even know how to. I don't even know how to start to do that, right?" This was like the 50s, and so he's like, "Okay, it's a condom." She's like, "I don't know what that is." He's like, "A rubber." And she's like, Needless to say, my aunt was born 9 months later. But no, it is very different. I mean, so that's how they were sort of raised. When I was brought up, it was very different. There's a cassette tape of me at about 3 1/2, and I'm doing Peter Pumpkin Eater. Had a wife and couldn't keep her, put her in a pumpkin shell, and never kept her very well. Peter was a male chauvinist pig. So I say afterwards, and you can hear my aunt and my mom in the background, no. Chauvinist pig, male chauvinist pig. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, male chauvinist pig." And I'm like, "What's that mean?" I'm like, "That's when a guy takes a girl and he puts her away and he tells her what to do and he never lets her out." And I'm like, "That's right." And I'm like, "Yeah!" It's like 3 1/2, right? Problem is, I love dick. So, joke's on them, or me, who knows. Also, speaking of dick, I went and got my lady bits checked, and they do ask pretty invasive questions, anal. Apparently only for that guy, I don't get asked that question. They're like, "She's not letting anybody in there." But they will, when was your last period? How many people have you had sex with? Well, I used to be in the last year question. And I went to a new doctor, and they said, "In your whole life." And then all of a sudden I felt like, when you're sitting with a guy that you're dating and you have the number question, like, "What's your number?" And I'm like, "Oh God, do I say 3? And if it's more like 30, they're about to be down there and be like, maybe 3 at the same time, It's like they're gonna find out, right? But then also, if it's 30 and you say 3, the only thing, if that guy has not slept with 30 people, the only thing he will ever think about again is how much dick you've had inside of you. It does not matter if it's not as much as him. Again, you were slut-shamed. I'm sorry, at the doctor. We're just used to it. I think that's why you were so surprised. Thank you. But then I also thought, like, well, they hear these numbers all the time, right? Do I want to, like, impress them and be like, I don't know, like 175? Either way, they're about to find out if I'm saying is true. And I don't know if you know enough about what it's like when we go in there, and I've been doing it for, 15 years, and I still never get used to what it's like going in. Like, you're sitting there in this paper robe, just chest exposed, and it's freezing in there. I mean, I do appreciate it at the end of the day because nobody wants to walk into a room that's had like warm, moist pussy all day. Anyway. So like, I appreciate it being kind of cold. I feel like it keeps the juices in better. And no matter how much I feel like I've scooted down enough on the bed, there's always like, one more scoot, please. You know, and you kind of try to keep your legs together and scoot like up, so now your butthole's just right in her nose. And then she's like, yeah, we're just gonna do that. And you're, oh, fuck. And then they take like a duck-billed platypus mouth and they stick it right inside of you. And they make it like a wind-up thing, like, as it like spreads you out. You're like, now we can fit 30 in there. They spread you all out, and then they just jab you with the most gigantic, like, Q-tip you've ever seen. And it is not pleasurable at all. It feels like your first fingering experience. You're like, nothing about this should feel bad, but it does. And then they release it and take it out, and then it's like a fucking, like, pot of spaghetti you just put into the, like, to drain the water out of, and just everything goes right back to where it was. You're like, well, all right, so I must feel violated today. But they do ask you, you know, what kind of contraception do you use? And I'm like, you know, condoms, or Plan B if Plan A doesn't work. Or, you know, a coat hanger after Roe v. Wade gets overturned. So, too late. But, you know, so I do prefer using condoms because being on birth control makes me a little crazy. And I don't have to deal with that shit because it also interacts with my other medication that I take. And I don't want to brag, but it's for depression. And so I've dated guys, and they always want you to be on birth control because they never want to use a condom, right? And so they'll try to convince me, you know, like, oh, I would wake you up every morning like this. And then you're like, if you've ever stayed with a kid, if you have a kid, if you have a niece or a nephew, and they just wake you up in the morning by fucking poking you, do you want to get up and fuck that kid? No. Not saying you should, there's obviously don't want to do that. But that's not a good reason is all I'm saying. Just know your audience. You know what I mean? So I mentioned I have depression. It's really fun. And one of the things that I like about it is that people really do try to relate. I appreciate that. But they also don't quite understand. It's almost like saying, you know, I know you just got radiation for the cancer again, and just wanted to say I had an x-ray last week on my shoulder, so I get radiation. Like, that to me is kind of how extreme it is. And an example that I kind of was coming up with of, instead of having an angel and a devil on your shoulders when you're depressed, it's like Hitler and John Lennon, right? So Hitler's like, no one will ever love you. You deserve to die. You're a piece of shit. Right? And then John Lennon's like, Jessica, you're better than this. People love you. Hitler's like, nein, your cat doesn't even love you. Remember that guy that jumped you and said all those horrible things? He was right about all of it. John Lennon's like, no, all you need is love. No, people do care, I promise. You also need to start organizing. Got a little dust everywhere. And it was like, what the fuck are you saying? John Lennon's like, I don't know. She gets easily distracted. But I do love dating in LA. It has all kinds of fun little obstacles with it. Like when you meet a guy and he thinks showering is just shampooing his hair and letting it run down the rest of his body. Also, when you know, when you're first dating somebody, you don't want to have to go in and shit, right? Like, and then come back out, and they're like, oh, we're gonna use the bathroom, and you're like, So one thing that started happening was when I first got my cat, she would come in and pee next to me, and I just thought it was really cute. Like, oh my god, my kitty wants to pee, it's so cute. And now she takes a shit right next to me while I'm in the bathroom. She'll like literally push the door open, like saunter in, like, oh, what are you doing in here? And then just look at me while she fucking shits. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to go out and explain this because sometimes they smell terrible. So I'm like, all right, well, the only thing I can do is like unbury it, right, to make it look like she just did it. And I'm like, oh, whatever. And so if that's not like convincing enough, then you go and like rinse it under the sink so that it looks like fresh. Oh my god, she's such a pig. She doesn't clean up after herself. What a weirdo. And then if you really do and you don't know what to do, you're like, I gotta lay it on something. You can try to make your shit look like her shit, like around up, and then put it in there. You know what else does that? I do have a cat. She's a fucking asshole. She gave me this like super scar. Anytime anyone comes over, she just attacks them. She's out of control. She's a fucking nuisance. I'm also just referring to my vagina right now. My grandmother, now that I've started doing stand-up, does this thing which I'm sure all comedians get, which is they start calling you up once a week and telling you a funny story about them that you can tell. And recently, my uncle did the same thing with a story about my dad, and I was like, all right, well, we'll go for it. He has a mullet, and he always has, and he always will, and it's terrible. And he tried to get it cut, and then all of my siblings were like, don't do it, it's how we find you in the crowd. It's the dumbest reason for our dad not to get a fucking adult haircut, just like a normal, attractive haircut. But anyways, he's known as Mullet Man, and he's like kind of socially awkward. He's always kind of like in the background, which makes it even worse that like weird mullet man's like hanging out in the background just being a creeper, and he always has a fucking camera on him, right? And I guess this was my aunt's wedding, and they were just married on a little bridge and over a creek in the backyard like you do. And my dad was filming it from the ditch, but nobody knew that he was like brother of the bride. And so the person actually filming the wedding just kept panning down like he was gonna catch a predator, you know? He's like, this guy is fucking crazy, like creepy, why is he just staring? So half of the wedding video is just of my weird mullet father in a ditch during his sister's beautiful wedding, who also changed her name to the name of the town that she grew up in after she was 40 years old, which would be like me changing my name to Murfreesboro. That's about how ridiculous it is, just in case everyone's wondering. Now you know my hometown? Hometown? Hometown. And that's my time.
Keep going, just everybody. All right, you guys ready for your next headliner? You ready? It's clapping there. You guys can't hear it. Let's get it going. You ready? All right. This next woman on the stage hosts the Too Dumb to Tame podcast. The very funny Mia Pinchoff, everybody.
No, you do. It's yours? My God. Good. I don't mean to judge a book by